Hey everybody, welcome back to Stephen Ministry Training. Today we're talking about Training Module 4, Part 2, Distinctively Christian Caring. Let's jump right in. Roman numeral number 1, a box of distinctive tools. Again, one of the things that makes us distinctive in what we do in Stephen Ministry is our motivation. You know, what we talked about in the training, Part 1 of this training module, our motivation, where it comes from. Now, continuing that thought, what else makes us unique? Some of the tools that we use in our caring. So for instance, forgiveness, confession, absolution, prayer, the Bible, and blessings. These are all unique to Christian caregiving. Okay, so these are all the tools that we're going to use in our caring. I'm going to kind of unpack each one of those during this training module. All right, Roman numeral number 2, thin prayers and fat prayers. Praying is, we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about this later, but one of the essential elements of praying, I hesitate to say it properly for somebody, but for lack of a better term, I'll say that. But when somebody is hurting, you need to listen very specifically as to what they're requesting prayer for. And be patient and just listen. And don't jump to conclusions as to what they may need prayer for, and just kind of cut them off. Let them really speak out what they want prayer for. And then be very mindful of all those things, and just really, when you pray for them, make sure you incorporate all those different things along with whatever God's leading you to pray about them. It's a way that it's an essential element of what we do as Stephen ministers. Again, we're there to just be present with them, to process, to pray, and to listen. Okay, and so listening and praying are two extremely important elements in that. So as people hear that you have listened to their prayer and that you're giving them that time and respect, and you're praying that back to and over them, that's going to be a huge blessing to them, I think. So Roman numeral number 3, tools of the trade, their use and abuse. That's actually, I'm going to save that for class. I got some really good discussion questions on that, so we're going to cover that in class. That's section 3 we're going to cover in class. All right, so moving on to section 4, confession and absolution over the back fence. In using confession and forgiveness, forgiveness is one of the most significant things you can do to help people get healed. Okay, when dealing with how this might come up in dealing with a Stephen minister, say that a spouse has been diagnosed with a sickness and they can't function within the family very much anymore. Their main job is to get well. Well, the other spouse, may have a lot of resentment. They may be angry that they've got to take over everything in the family and basically be a single parent household, and they may be really angry at that. And that part of your job as a Stephen minister is to get that out of them, to be their confessor in that situation. And then once they're done, getting that out, maybe you want to ask them if it'd be helpful to ask God for forgiveness for that attitude, and to walk them through that. So you have forgiveness and confession, they go hand in hand. Or, excuse me, again, maybe a spouse has passed away, and maybe they're angry at their spouse for doing that. Again, may not be rational, but it's an emotion, so you might want to have them walk through forgiveness for feeling that way, or for being angry at them. I don't know. I'm throwing things out there, but always look for opportunity. The opportunity may come up where your care receiver wants to confess something, and you're there to stand in and forgive them. So let's look at some of the different elements of how, you may sound really simple. Oh, it's just forgiveness. Well, it's not always that simple. For instance, if somebody is confessing something, and as soon as they get out, well, I'm sorry for, and then you just come out, you're forgiven. Everything's forgiven. Don't even worry about it. Don't even need to bring it all up and hash it all. Just, you're forgiven. Okay, and you might think that you're doing them a favor because you're not having them dredge up all the elements of why they're feeling guilty or why they need forgiveness. But actually, I found it very, very healthy to be able to kind of list out the different things that they want to be forgiven for. I think it's part of the process. I don't think it's a beating themselves up or trying to kind of, I'm not sure, but it's not something that I found it's very healthy as they like, because sometimes they feel like it's not complete unless it's been spoken out. And I found it very healthy. So allow them to expand on it as much as they want, and to confess to whatever they want to give them time. And then once have spoken their piece, then say you're forgiven. Another element that you want to avoid is, say that whatever they're confessing is something that you find abhorrent. You find something that's like, I can't believe you would have done that, or something to that effect, and it kind of comes out in the way you really make them work for it, make them earn it. Well, are you sorry for this? Are you sorry for, obviously you don't want to do that either, to make them feel guilty or to draw it out of them. So again, let them expound, create a safe environment for them, and then let them know that they are forgiven. Prayer. This is one of the most powerful tools that we have as caregivers. Just recently I was reading in Celebration of Discipline by Foster, on his section on prayer. He said that we can change God's mind through prayer. I'll just start with that, the simple statement, and that blew my mind. I could not take that in. And he talked about Moses, and he cited examples in the Bible where God's mind was changed. And so he described it as we are co-laborers with God in determining the future. And once I heard that, it radically affected how I prayed. Because sometimes I think a lot of us fall into the trap of, it's God's will, He's in control, it's going to, He's in control, so whatever His will is going to happen one way or the other, whether I pray for it or not. And that, when you approach it that way, it's kind of, you see yourself as a bit powerless in that situation. However, if you're working with God to determine the future, then that adds a whole different dimension to your prayer and the way you pray, and with the anticipation that you pray with. So I think that keeping that in mind, that you're a co-laborer with God, it will add hopefully a new dimension to the way you pray and the way you're going to pray for your care receiver. As I say, it's one of the most powerful tools we have in our arsenal. Our prayer is not making conversation with God, it's joining the conversation that is already going on with God. Okay. Again, active listening is going to be very essential when you pray for someone. Because I'm going to imagine that with your care receiver, that praying for them is going to be a very regular thing. So once you hear their request, really, again, give them time and listen intently as to what they want prayer for, and then add in what God feels, God's guiding you to pray for them for, and it's going to be a great blessing for them. Next, the Bible, another one of our most powerful tools. Now, a lot of people that I've met are very apprehensive about using the Bible. They're scared because they don't know the Bible. They're not a Bible scholar. Well, most of us aren't. So what I would recommend is that before you go into your first care receiver meeting, or before you become an active Stephen minister, go through the Bible and pick out passages that you feel would be appropriate and would be a real blessing to people. Pick some of them that are just good general passages about God being in control, God loving you, and then you might pick some more about sorrow, or how God is there to heal your wound. There's a lot of different passages, and I don't want to suggest. I want you to find them, make them personal to your own self, and go through them, decide which is going to be the best, and then memorize them, or certainly mark them in your Bible so you have them at the ready, so that when your care receiver needs it most, you can share that with them. And I think it'll have a great impact. Because a lot of the time, obviously, when people are going through crisis, it could potentially be a crisis of faith for them, and so it's a great opportunity for you to share what Christ says about them and how He feels about them. Now, some of the things I want to share from Stephen Ministry about sharing passages in the Bible. Sometimes just sharing the Bible passage is enough and nothing more. It's that simple. They get it. Self-explanatory. That's fine. When discussing the passage, spend most of your time listening to make sure that the discussion meets the care receiver's needs. Hopefully, when they hear it, it ministers to them, as opposed to just they look kind of disinterested in whatever. But you can watch for that. Ask open-ended questions after sharing the passage, such as, does this spark any thought or feeling in you that you'd like to share? Such open-ended questions can help bring about open discussion. Next, the discussion should lead the care receiver to great understanding of the passage. And finally, share the Bible in order to provide reassurance and to strengthen the care receiver's relationship with God. So you might have to do a little more homework when they talk about like what's the story behind the passage. Look through, maybe check out the story behind what's going on in the Bible so you can give context to it if they need to know about that. That concludes part 2 of Module 4. Thank you for participating. Thank you again, guys, for everything you're doing right now, and thank you for your diligence in studying this material. And I hope you're enjoying it. I hope it's adding a lot to your ministry. We'll talk to you soon.